No, didn't come back. Not urgent. Sorry?
I don't know how to start it.
That's where I got in trouble last time.
Yes.
You ready to go live?
Oh, right, so go live.
But you can't go live until you're playing.
Yep, which I am. Okay, title required. Okay, let's do it. Oh, yeah, we've got to just add in
Sorry?
Side. Tonight's agenda on it. We got any MLAs coming?
Recent definitely.
So what's with the others not coming?
Emma said she was most likely going to be here.
Yeah.
Julia's going for something that... Yeah. He arrived. He went around those.
Let's before the meeting.
Just here a couple of minutes of the meeting, so I ran.
So I didn't actually wasn't here for the actual meeting.
Not as such.
Which case it
It's an apology.
We'll make an apology.
Okay.
We weren't sure which way it was.
I didn't see you go, so
I did.
Yeah, if you just move that he becomes an apology, we'll let it take us.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll know they're here and then
So I'll put him down as an apology.
Can we have questions from the floor and just, you know,
Well, we're doing the budget. We're doing the budget.
No, no, please.
And if,
okay.
So it's a policy debate on issues.
so what I thought we would do,
Yeah, but a lot of people just want to air their grievances.
Well, that's,
yeah,
Oh, okay.
at the end there, we can do the budget first. And then we'll have, I'll ask if there are any other questions from the floor on other matters, if people are happy with that.
Most people, yeah.
Are you happy for that? If I just ask if there are any other questions, people have questions about any other matters that they wish to from the floor? Yeah, because they can get.
anything you think we should focus on? Yes.
Yeah.
But I think we should be asking them.
Yeah.
It's not on the agenda.
Yes.
People will come to have their say. They may just want to come and say,
And then.
but they will come.
It's okay to say,
Yeah.
I'll take that on notice.
Oh, oh no, if they ask us something we don't know about, well, I don't know about, I'm going to say that, thank you very much. And we can come back to.
My advice is to
Yeah.
Unless- Well, yeah.
If it comes up. Yeah.
And don't forget Bruce as the weekend.
I know.
But I don't want to talk about that. That will be up to her to talk about.
Yeah.
If she's been doing it, she should.
Oh, yeah, but she will probably chime in.
If she's here, yeah.
But she says she's coming. But she'll give the party line and the mental health line. People want to hear something a bit more solid than that. I'm sorry.
Well,
If it's either, it's one of two choices, mental health or the jail. Build one. Build one. Stop it. Just living in
Just
ours.
need to know that.
Anyway, they're letting me in.
Yeah, we're letting everyone know.
Just don't
They're not
want
gonna
to
rock.
walk in and walk in the door.
Yeah, last week.
You have to say, because Bill was
Do I
going to say,
ask
okay,
her to
this
stop?
is-
Laptop.
No. I thought you had a,
No,
no.
that's the one Tom sent.
Yeah.
I never used it.
But sorry, he didn't give me the password, he just gave me the laptop.
Right.
It's not in the bag, is it?
You might have it taped on there or something, Bill.
I will go.
Okay, 7:10.
Yeah,
I know
otherwise,
we need to test the,
we'll have to
we
call
need to
ourselves
test
the
that.
password, Tom.
No, we'll hook the other speakers in.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
No time.
Okay.
Now, is there anything else that we need to do?
Yes, there's banners.
Balance
We should
it.
put
I
one
reckon.
down like a drawer. I think there's one up on the stage.
Figure it out.
So I saw the argument from Tim.
Where's the stage? Up there and one down here.
Yeah.
Where are others? Where else?
We're all Who's going to be doing the signing?
We can, just to start off with, it's just a 5-minute job, I can do it before we start.
I found though when I did it, people came in late and wanted to talk to me and I couldn't let them in. So if you've got another job that actually doesn't work.
Yeah, that's what's happening. That's
they-
usually why I sat there.
Yeah. Because I did it one week and it doesn't work because they want to chat to you.
And also, we need to then get us
Okay, yeah, we need the screen, okay, screens up to check the, okay, who you got the screen?
Lena Blair may be here.
Where's Nina?
Lena Blair.
Yeah.
Tim Dawson. He's from Communication Link.
And he's the one that's he's done that.
He's on the link reading Durban. And Phil Burns, I think. I need to check. It's a question I think Phil Burns.
And we also got Lena.
Lena doesn't come.
So at the moment there's 4, I think. Is that the 4?
We're hearing 4, yes.
So Jim is from communication.
Tim is taking the notes.
David Jones has been talking.
David Jones, or the other,
Dr. Burns.
yes, he's
So-
in Sydney.
So what about that?
They're from the Western Master Plan.
So they'll actually tell us about that.
They're telling us
Local
what
services, they will be provided.
they're telling us what they have. When they previously came round and talked to everybody, they're now going to come around and tell us what they heard.
What, from us?
From all the consultations.
From everyone, this is their feedback from all the consultation they've done. We used to have one down just by that door there, where those 2 chairs are. Yeah. No, sorry, I don't think you didn't, unless it's in the. It's there. Just here. Most probably hasn't written it down. Sorry, I've got it down. Yeah, we're not going to have this thing about it. Password, I can't remember. It's not just admin, is it? That's what I think of. Is it just admin? Not a wireless password, is it? That's what it is? No. Okay,
Don't worry,
just what don't throw out, so I'll just. But we have it to know if it's here, if not, I'll have to ask you for it. Cover it up. Because I don't know what these plans are, hopefully it isn't even next month or.
Subject will be so the speakers lined up.
That's the cost of that sort of stuff.
What's that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
look,
oh, yeah.
No, well, one area. It's here.
So yeah, I've got all the speakers lined up now.
I saw your email about Wombats.
Yep. So I've got the people running the gas free project. Keep going. And I've got people, and that's the Conservation Council people.
Yeah.
And I've got, the Wombats haven't replied, but they will. I believe. Alice is ready to give us a...
Is there a microphone for you?
Just there, or there's one there?
Oh, it's a hand.
Probably that one there.
Just hands-free.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, no, hands-free. It's hold on. Thank you. It works. Right. To get back into practice, I'm going to press on that microphone again. Yeah, this is one line. This is the hardest.
Did we work out what's the name is that?
This is.
It's like one of those.
Bill, do you want to
Yeah,
share?
there goes that.
Do you want to share a video as well? Are you going to sit at that?
Here.
Yeah, try to.
Can we just is it on? Can we turn it on?
On, just the like.
Hi. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Well, thank you.
Sleep mode. It's not.
Hello.
Hello?
There's two lots of minutes. Yeah, there's two lots. Because,
and
yeah, there was last one. But we had the one that was printed off, so we have to approve by tonight. Just sign this. We'll close the door, but I know people come and go, so you get the breeze through.
It does, the breeze does go through. It's a bit harder than here over there too, I think.
Just hold the.
I think it's harder than here over there.
You just still get the noise from that side.
Nice supermoon tonight.
Oh, it's beautiful. Still when it came down, it's just coming up over the.
It's quite a pink colour.
Yeah, as I drive down through the still playing orchids from the I didn't see it last night. Was it?
I saw it last night driving along home.
What time was that?
Just picture on
Because even last night, we usually.
I agree.
It's roots like that. And I'm like, it's like this.
Better?
Where's the moon? Is it?
Right, so I can shoot straight across like that.
From there.
Well, I don't know, because I only saw it when I was.
Yeah, and I just thought later at night when you normally get a full moon, it's really bright and I look out and I just start looking at it out in daylight out in the back garden.
I saw it earlier as well. I said,
Yeah, no, it's
Coming home, of course, it would have been behind me. So,
yeah.
beautiful, different.
It's only when it comes up. There is from my laundry, when I look at my back laundry window, it's just at the spot where it walked in when you come up.
Just
It comes up over my garage and it moves. But it's only, I never heard it twice.
Big table back towards me.
How are you going?
And you drop the feet in front, you wind down.
It's all right.
that's better.
That's
Nice and square on the screen.
as bad as the vision.
Yeah, it's that's what it's going to get.
Can you see that, sort of up there?
Yeah, can you make the right one?
We can only see the Canberra hospital bit.
I'm in the way.
No, can't the other, if the other print is that size, we won't see it.
That's as big as you're going to get it, I think.
I guess so.
April, May 2021.
That's as big as you're going to get it.
Okay.
So,
It's the restricted size.
beyond Bill. It's only 2 minutes away.
So 2 minutes away. I can scoot up and get.
He's actually at the Canberra Hospital expansion project. He goes there tonight. So he's not going to answer the phone. Well, that's right. That's right. No, probably won't.
We just called Fran.
Yeah, I was just talking to Fran. I let her know exactly. She was great. She said, "Oh, I'll drive you over."
Yeah, she's lovely.
The residents know.
Yeah. No, she said to me, "You're not very important. Don't worry. You don't need to know."
Stay
And I was
on.
like, "Oh, but David's more important than you know."
She's doing well.
It's okay, I'll just stand there. It's just a little raise up.
Well, I might have to. I'm not working on a CT project. So, no, I'm not on a CT project. I work for a company called Communication. So, our role is to do community engagement and and to so in phase 1 consultation, we run the community pop-ups and feedback at community councils like this. We feed it into a report that informs the city government. So, in their planning, so in phase 2, we're doing it again. As soon as we have access to all of the plans and so on, we'll be able to look further. That's not a question for me. That's a question for David in a minute.
You want an agenda? You try to get them off. Oh yeah, Julia. Now live.
So I picked up one that has been moved up a little bit.
Would you like to see Weston Creek?
Test the sound.
I just put a mouse up there.
So it's actually going to what you
It should reach. It's remote. Wireless mouse to the laptop. Yes.
It's all right. I just say I've got one of those little remote things, but
I do too.
I've got it at home. I've got to go and find it.
Do you want to test the sound for home?
Genesis.
Plans for that. Well, I suppose once we have an idea, we don't know what it's going to be. It's going to be fairly soon.
Now, we
The microphones, we actually do Facebook. We do Facebook, so there's a live feeding, so we'll need the microphone for that. So if you'd like to take a seat, I'll call you up in a minute. And there's anything else? Is there the last one? Oh, okay.
I'll let sound mine.
and then I'll run around with the roaming noise.
Yeah,
Would it be better if we use this one as the name? Because that's your
Oh, you said that.
So that's this one.
it was working.
Hello? Press that one? That one?
That one runs the other one.
Yeah.
So we'll use that as a roaming.
Testing.
No,
Hello.
that one works.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
We'll be tuned up. That's all right, it was turned off.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to just take your seats and we'll get the meeting started. Well, good evening. My name's Janice Paul. I'm going to be chairing the meeting this evening. I'd just like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to the meeting and to also welcome anybody that's home watching us on Facebook. I do have some apologies for this evening. There's Liam Foley, Trevor Wilson and Andrew Collins. I would like now to ask Bill if he'd come up to do the acknowledgement of country.
Good evening. We are honoured to be meeting on the ancestral lands of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We acknowledge these First Australians as the traditional custodians of this land, whose cultures are among the oldest living in human history. We pay respect to the elders of the communities in the Murrumbidgee region and extend our recognition to their descendants. past, present and future. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. This evening we have a guest speaker from the ACT Health. He's from the Canberra Hospital Master Plan team. His name is David Jones. He's come here this evening just to give us an update on the consultation and the way that the hospital plans are proceeding. David.
Thank you. Thank you for the welcome, and thank you everyone for inviting and having me here this evening to give a short update on the consultation process that we've been undertaking. Let's get that in the right spot. There we go. The Canberra Hospital Master Plan. I was here probably 5 weeks ago, I think, a month ago, at your last meeting where we talked about the consultation process that we're undertaking. We've finished that first phase of the consultation process. And very soon, we're in this sort of intervening middle period where we're just about to head into a more detailed phase of consultation where we'll be coming out to the community with options and a listening report on the things we heard through that first phase of consultation. And you can see here where we are in that process. So we've had that first stage, hundreds of pieces of feedback from across the community, multiple meetings with community councils and other stakeholder groups of interest have been feeding back really good information to us about the things that are important to them at the campus and things that we could improve at the campus. The types of participation that we've had during that time. So we've had a dozen community pop-up events, visited every community council. Over 500 individuals and representative community groups have provided feedback into the master plan process so far. 4,500 Your Say views. Over 2,500 residents have received flyers seeking their participation in the consultation process. For those residents in particular that live around the Canberra Hospital campus, and nearly 900 pieces of individual feedback from those groups. What we've done with that information is we've pulled it together into categories. What are the things that we're hearing? What are the things that people want to see changed and or improved at the campus? We've talked about some of these before. Car parking is an issue. The clinical service upgrades to the facilities where the clinical services are provided. Accessibility and connectivity between the campus. How do you find your ways around? The public and staff amenity. Where are those spaces that you go to, indoors and outdoors, that make the campus easier for you to access and participate in? That place where you might go for a break, for a cup of coffee, when you might, or a breath of fresh air when you might be dealing with something which can be quite confronting. Other things that we heard about the safety and security of the site, so the lighting and the footpaths and how you walk around. How a master plan can develop a modern hospital that can assist in that staff retention and recruitment. How it can really be a place where people not only want to go because they love their work and the things they do, but the actual environment supports them to do that well. The outdoor areas, it's a spread out campus at the moment, and a lot of the space is quite difficult to access. So how can we improve green spaces and also introduce some play areas for families that might be there with children? And also, how does the territory-wide services plan? So that, again, we go back to that clinical approach, the clinical services that will be delivered across the ACT. So how will the Territory's master plan be able to respond to the territory-wide services plan in the future? I don't have that report to share with you tonight. As I mentioned, we're in that intervening period, but we wanted to maintain our commitment to the council, the community councils, and come out and discuss what we've heard. You'll soon see in the coming weeks, we'll be coming back out again and we'll speak to Janice and council members and ask them to share the information that we'll be providing. We're providing some options on potential redevelopment of the campus over the next 20 years, which will identify some precincts for prioritisation, and it'll also be linked to a listening report. So all the things that we heard in our community council presentations, all the things that we heard through individual representations and inputs through your say, and thank you to everyone or anyone who may have had input into that. You'll hear through that listening report, and you'll see some alignment where the master plan is trying to introduce opportunities to resolve some of those problems that might exist. So we'll be releasing a couple of options, at least, that you will see on your say. And also you'll be able to drill down into those options like you do on that Your Say website to provide direct comment about some of the opportunities that we might see for development. This second phase of feedback, if you like, will inform a final report that will go to government for a recommended master plan approach to be developed over the next 20 years. These are just some of the locations that we have for our pop-ups. Again, we'll be at every community council meeting talking about and seeking input into the master plan process. We'll be at multiples of shopping centres and libraries across Canberra. We'll be doing those pop-up events, which are smaller, a couple of hours in a shopping centre, trying to grab feedback as people walk past. But we'll also be doing some larger drop-in type events where we'll be there for maybe 4 hours, making sure community councils in those areas know, and giving people the space and the time to come and talk one-on-one if they like, rather than if they prefer to do that, rather than take the Your Say approach or using the email address that we have available for the master plan as well. So as I mentioned, when phase 2 commences, and that will be commencing within hopefully the next few weeks, we'll be talking to community councils. We'll be coming out with much more information which will let you look at what some of the options are and let you also see all the feedback that we had from the community in developing those options. Thank you, and I'm happy to take some questions about that process and what we've done today.
Are there any questions?
I've got the microphone. I've got the microphone. One from online. Who are your key stakeholders and how are you consulting with them?
So we've identified every community council. We've gone out broadly to the public. We've gone to peak bodies across the ACT, including the Healthcare Consumers Association, the ACT Disability Reference Group. Key stakeholders are also obviously the clinicians at the hospital, because they're the ones that use, and the clinicians and the nurses and all the other staff who make our hospital run every day. So broadly have invited multiple stakeholder groups, peak bodies across the ACT for input into the master plan, and have participated through events such as this through the community councils.
So do you have like a steering committee on it?
Pardon?
Do you get them all together at the end? Like, what's the process beyond this for the master plan? You take the consultation from all those groups, and then do you have a committee that drives it, and how will you continue to engage with them?
So we've undertaken this first phase of consultation, reached out to all those groups, got really good pieces of feedback in. Now we've done this listening report. Again, as this second phase of consultation, we'll go out and talk to those groups and show them some of the solutions that we think we're able to offer through the master plan options, and get feedback directly from them again. So we're having one-on-one conversations with those peak stakeholder groups to get that conversation and their input into those master plan options.
Thank you for coming. And you may not be able to answer this question for a number of reasons, including you're told not to. During the process, did many people say to you, why are you redeveloping that site? Why aren't you going to a greenfield site somewhere else and perhaps going closer to the demographic centre of the city?
We had a couple of comments that were like that. We're really confident that the master plan can develop that site to enable that to deliver really contemporary medical care in a way that is accessible and has great amenity for the community. So we're really confident that that site will continue to be Canberra's primary tertiary hospital. At the same time as that, you might be aware that the government's made a commitment to look at a north side hospital as well. So sitting alongside that, the development of a new north side hospital will complement and be a part of that broader territory-wide health services plan. We are looking through the master plan, and this is another thing that the government has committed to doing, is what services are being delivered on the site that actually might be delivered somewhere else. And there was a commitment regarding an elective surgery centre on the north side as well. So the master plan combined with that territory-wide services plan will certainly provide options for Canberra Hospital Campus to continue to be that main tertiary hospital campus, but also providing services across the territory that the community can access.
Yeah, I obviously need to get more, have your say, personas in there, because you only got a couple. But Paul Costigan wrote this morning about it, and he made the same observation I've been making for weeks and weeks and weeks or months about it. It's a very constrained site, and I think government and ACT Health are probably going to have to work a lot harder convincing a significant portion of the people that that is the most appropriate site for delivering such a large-scale hospital. And we've all got experiences that are 90% of the time involving actually getting into the hospital, getting into the campus, and I really can't see anything that's improving in the planning. Anyway, I'll keep an open mind.
Well, I really think when we come out with those options, there'll be some opportunity in there for you to see the things that you're talking about how you access the hospital and get around the hospital and service can be delivered. And also the listening report will certainly show you the things that we heard from the community and how we're responding to them through those options.
What I'm not understanding is, in your introduction, you really described a consultation process and how you're going against a consultation process. You didn't actually describe any of the services that are being provided, what's not being provided, what is being provided, what will be referred to Sydney, how it will be funded, all the things that you get in a strategic master plan. We really haven't been told anything yet. You've been talking about how you've been consulting. So when do we actually get real information about what level of heart surgery is going to be taking place, what level of neurological interventions can take place, what is the relationship to the university? Is there a research department? Is it continuing to be a teaching hospital? We see in the newspapers that the ANU may not continue as a medical school. What does that mean to the services that are provided here? And does it mean we're actually getting less services as we move forward? All of these questions to me are foundational and should be part of the presentation and leadership from ACT Health, rather than just open-ended questions about what do you want? What do you think? Do you want more trees? Do you want more parking? Do you want more, pretty paths with secure lighting, which are sort of basically 101 design. So when do we find out what's really happening and when and the timeline?
Yeah, thank you. I think we touched on a little conversation like this when I was here last, and we talked about the territory-wide services plan. So the territory-wide services plan will be that thing that discusses those aspects of clinical services delivery and planning over the next 5 and more years across the ACT. So the way that we deliver services at the hospital, at the Canberra Hospital campus, the way that we deliver services at Northside Hospital are an integral part of that and the services that will be delivered. We've been very open in that the master plan process is about how we fit the future service delivery, the future buildings that need to be developed on our campus and how people interact with those buildings and access those buildings. So the discussion that we've been having with the community has been very focused on how do you access it, what kind of amenity do you need, and at the same time we're talking with those specialists at the Canberra Health Service about how they access and use the hospital to deliver the services that they need to deliver as a part of the territory-wide health services plan and as a part of the clinical services plan. That territory-wide health services plan will be going out to community consultation. I don't have that with me, but that territory-wide services plan certainly will be going out to community consultation.
What is the timeline?
I don't have the time frame for that. Unfortunately,
well, what are we talking about? You know, we're talking about a service that which is ill-defined in a time that is ill-defined.
And not having a territory-wide services plan for me to consult on doesn't preclude the things that we're talking about with the community, and doesn't diminish the important information that we've had back from those 890 pieces of information, I think it is, from the community that have talked about the things that they want to see at the campus and how they want to interact at the campus. Both of those things, as they are developed, can be developed and interacted with each other at the same time.
So if you've had 890 pieces of feedback already, wouldn't the second round of consulting be the area where you shared that with the rest of the community? Not so that we can enter an echo chamber and, but just so that you've got something that says that you've done some work.
And that's what I touched on. Sorry if that wasn't clear at the start. But when I talked about we're in this intervening period, we're not quite there with that documentation with you about the things that we heard, but we still wanted to maintain our commitment to come to the council and say, these are the outlines of the things we heard. There will be a listening report which says these are all the things that we heard from the community. So as we start that, that second phase of consultation, and this is how we think these things can be responded to with the draft master plan.
Yeah, I think that correct me if I'm wrong, Warwick, but what maybe the community is sort of looking for is the vision that we have, or that ACT Health has for the health services in this area. I mean, you just spoke to the fact that you're coming and consulting on the buildings and how we use them, etc. We trust that the building people will take care of that, and that's sort of a bit smaller fry down the end. Beyond that conversation, I think that this community and others are able to handle with a great deal of intellect the higher and mightier aspirational hot ticket items on this, and maybe that's the sort of conversation level that we'd like it to be elevated to, and only you guys can do that because you're the bureaucrats, and the other leaders that we have here, you're the people that are hired and paid to do that for the community.
And certainly those meaty conversations are the things that we'll be having when we do come out to you with that listening report, with those options analysis. I think that might be it. James?
Are there any more questions? No? Well, thank you, Dave, for coming along, and we look forward to actually hearing the next round when you come back with that more detailed information for us.
And we will get that out to you early so that you're able to share it with your community and get that listening report and have those detailed conversations that you want to have.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to take the opportunity just to thank David for speaking to us this evening. For the next part of our business, is there any, Emma, are you wanting to have a talk this evening? At this time of the evening in our meeting, we've actually set aside some time for any of our members of the Legislative Assembly to come along and talk to us. And Emma's here this evening, Emma Davison, so 5 minutes or...
Hi everyone. Look, I can fill you in on a few useful things that we've been doing since our last meeting here at the Council. We have, as the Minister for Disability, we have respite effect and recovery grants open at the moment, and what these are for is to support people with disability in Canberra and their families and carers to help reduce social isolation. So It's small grants up to a maximum value of $500 for individuals to pay for things like, say, accommodation for time away, or magazine subscription, domestic help, food delivery, or data for internet access, things like that, things that will help people while a lot of people are experiencing more social isolation than they usually would. And you can find a link to that on my Facebook page, or if you go to the Community Services Directorate website and follow the links through there, you'll find a way to apply for that grant funding. So if you know people with disabilities who might need a little bit of extra help, this is very useful for them. Something else that happened a couple of weeks ago was we passed some new laws came into effect in the ACT to try and better protect vulnerable Canberrans from abuse of older people or people with a disability, or people who are socially isolated. So these were a range of laws to try and help make our community a bit safer and provide some extra protections for people against that kind of abuse. So that's something that's come into effect just in the last couple of weeks. And the third thing I wanted to let you know about is that we've opened a refurbished mental health unit called Goangal. It's a Ngunnawal word that means honey. And it's a mental health unit for people who need somewhere to stay long term as they build up the skills to transition back into the community. So it's something that we haven't had quite the right kind of rehabilitative space for, but this will allow people who need quite a long period of time to work on those skills to be able to build that up and have a good, suitable, safe place to stay while we're doing that. So there are a few of the things that we've been doing. Do you have any questions?
Where is the mental health?
Goangal, it is, I believe it's in Belconnen. Yeah. Do we have any questions? Yes.
Council's been, this probably fits in your portfolio, we're trying to seek some funding, and we're knocking on a few doors of businesses around here, to develop a gardening project called Healthy Garden, Healthy Life, to get a bit of sustainable crop growing on a site we've identified. And we think it'll trying to engage with the community near a public housing site and children walking past on the way to school. I'm wondering whether we might be able to tap on you for support in principle. I'm happy to share the detail with you, and we'll come to the other MLAs as well, so that we can say, hey, and the local MLAs support what we're trying to do.
Yes, so that sounds a lot like, so this is a community garden project that you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit different to your usual community garden. It's about giving people a little patch as they walk past, a bit like a food forest, I suppose. Walk past to grab up something if you need it, and hopefully we'll just create a sense of community, a greater sense of community down there. We met these people when we did the Floreal pop-up. They got talking to us and we talked to them, and we've got a nice little interchange going, and we thought, I think we could do something there.
Yeah, that sounds really exciting. So Minister Rebecca Bassarotti would be the minister responsible for that, the combination of, you're talking about food, agriculture and environment. So that certainly sounds like something that she would have responsibility for. And I know that we do have an annual grants program for these kinds of projects. So if you wanted to send me an email, I'll just pop next door to Rebecca's office and get an answer for you.
We weren't quite ready to go to government for grants. We thought we'd try the community and then come to government and see if they'll top us up.
Yeah.
So rather than put a total burden on the taxpayer, see what we can get before we got there. And also, it's builds a bit of resilience in the community. of self-sufficiency, a bit of pride. We just thought we'd give it a go and see where we end up.
Yeah, it sounds like a great community engagement piece of work. Yeah. Okay, do send me the details and I'll see what I can do to help. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Hello, Julia. Would you like to have 5 minutes?
Yes, if I may.
This is Julia Jones. It might be better to come the other way, Julia.
Sorry, I'll just go behind.
Just watch the cords.
Yeah. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me tonight here. It's always good to be at the Community Council meetings. Just a couple of things to update you on. Last week we had a very long sitting week. You might have already heard from the other MLAs. We were debating the budget. And the two sort of particularly salient areas that we're working on for here and for everybody, I guess, in the electorate, but also around Canberra. We did have a motion about policing, trying to ask for a few more police for the ACT. It's my experience from many years of campaigning and being the Shadow Minister last term that we are quite under-resourced in policing, and the poor old police are trying to do the best they can without many numbers, which is one of the reasons why when they get called on, they really have to triage what they do attend, how quickly they attend, and if they're able to come. So they're sort of doing the most urgent things, but not very often getting to the less super urgent things. So we would like them to have more capacity, and that's something we've been asking for some time. So we've just put it to the new government as a sort of a post. Now we're into the new government, and the answer was a firm no. So that's where we're at the moment. We'll keep asking, we'll keep making our case. I think I've known that there's been a pressure on police since long before I got elected, when trying to call the police for various things and then not being able to attend. And calls for service are greater than just the stats that we see of crime in the ACT. The other issue that I did some work on last week in the chamber was the endoscopy wait list. We have 7,200 people roughly on the endoscopy wait list, and this was something that was discovered by a really clever journo young lady at the Canberra Times, some of her investigative work. And as a result, I went into the chamber, asked the Health Minister, Rachel Stephen-Smith, if we can please do some work on this and to come back with some information for us. So she's agreed to come back in September with a plan for how that will be addressed. So I thought that was a little bit of a positive conversation, let's say, about something that we might be able to see improve. I'm all for improvements, and I promised to be grateful and positive if we do see a decent improvement in the list, just to prove that I can. And I was really pleased to actually, as Emma was saying, I was pleased to actually tour Garingal, the new newly refurbished long-stay mental health facility, which is actually in Brian Hennessy House, which is on the Calvary campus at the hospital. So I was really lucky. This week I was there with one of Minister Davidson's staff, actually. So it's an old facility, Brian Hennessy House, but this section's been completely done up. It's all new doors and windows and painted, and it's actually quite a light-filled and positive place. I know that when people with severe mental health issues are turning up at ED, that's a really tough time, but what we're seeing in these facilities is people working towards going back to day-to-day life out of the community. And I was really pleased to get asked by a few of the residents to follow things up for them in the Parliament. Some of them had written, some of them had had opinions about things that had happened to them in the past, so that was really good. I like the opportunity to get out amongst our health consumers and listen to their needs, especially mental health. It's an area that we've asked people to pay lots of attention to, and now they are. So anyway, does anybody have any questions for me? Or you can catch me afterwards if you like. No? Just want to say thank you. Thanks to the committee and for all you're doing, and we'll keep on working hard for the area.
Thank you, Julie. And our final MLA this evening is Dr. Marissa Patterson.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. So I thought perhaps
further to the conversation we just had, although I can't answer any questions particularly, I thought this might be useful information in terms of the hospital. So in terms of clinically, there'll be, and this is just coming off the government's website, is a new intensive care unit that'll double from currently 30 beds to 60, with 4 dedicated paediatric beds, family zones, this type of thing. There'll be a new emergency department that will have 114 treatment spaces, which is 39 more that's currently available. A new coronary care unit, which will have 32 beds. The expansion will see 22 new theatres that will replace the 13 available today, which will include state-of-the-art hybrid and interventional radiology theatres and a whole heap of new X-ray facilities, CAT scans, MRI scans. The new facility will also include 2 additional wards providing 64 surgical inpatient beds and storage spaces for equipment. So that's a little bit of an idea of a bit further on from some of the questions that you were asking tonight. And yeah, just to go on from what has been happening in the Assembly in terms of what I was working on last week, I moved a motion to call on the government to regulate assisted reproductive technology, so IVF in the ACT. So currently that's not regulated and we don't have a donor registration system here. And not to say, like, the services that we have here in the ACT are of very high standard, but yeah, they're not regulated. So yeah, that motion received tripartisan support, which was fantastic. And yeah, I guess there's a couple of things. There's a police engagement coffee pop-up thing down at Weston, which I'm sorry I can't, I'll have to get the date and send it through to you guys. And yeah, I think that's about it for tonight. Is there any questions? Yes.
Yes, because Michelle. I'd just like to ask a question on your role, you know, in the climate change, chair of the climate change, environment and diversity committees. What sort of consideration has been given to the major air pollution issue in Canberra, which in the winter, which is wood smoke and wood from wood heating, and just, well, A, is it being considered at all, and if it's not, you know, perhaps why not?
Yep.
There's a new report out by the Asthma Australia saying 77% of the population support phasing out wood heating, and I think there's a growing community, you know, tiredness of having this sort of toxic sort of air pollution blown at us and nothing happening, and it's not for the lack of people raising the issue. So just wonder what you're doing.
So currently we have an inquiry looking into the renewable energy sector in the ACT, and an inquiry into wood heaters has not been discussed yet, and so that is something that I can take to the committee, and, you know, I really welcome ideas for inquiries and, you know, what's important to the community, and yeah, we can definitely pursue that.
Further on that, Bruce, and I've asked is most MLAs I've ever bumped into. Over here, climate is a bit different. The topography is different, so we get different air flows, we get different pollution patterns. I'll put aside light pollution, which sometimes is not light, not pollution, that's a different story. We get dust, we get pollen, we get smoke.
Yep.
We're generally monitoring for here is reported from Monash.
Okay.
If you look at the topographic map of Canberra, it does not compute. So I've been raising this for about 12 months. I talked to Michelle recently about it. She's of the same view, that it's perhaps a health issue.
Yeah.
Because you've got kids with asthma, you've got bronchitis, you've got various
Allergies,
eye
hay
illnesses.
fever, yeah.
Yeah, you got the
Yeah.
list. So I'll go dust. Dust flowing in when we're a northwester comes in from the clearing over, well, it's now Whitlam. It's not dampened down properly. Thank God they say it's pure dust. We also get smoke from burn-offs, which is good, controlling bushfire risk. But there is a consequence that it flows down in here and affects people. We've got the wood fires. On top of that, we've also got, especially during COVID last winter, we had all these fire pits in backyards. People rediscovered their backyards. So the pall of smoke. But for those of us who do suffer a bit with some of these elements, we'd like to have a bit of an idea on what that day is going to look like before we go out.
Yep.
So anyway, what I'm suggesting, I know a few others in the room feel the same way, I haven't known anybody who doesn't feel the same way. Why don't we have a monitoring station somewhere in this area that we can get onto an app and tell us what the air looks like now, not what the air looked like in Monash half an hour ago.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think that's a great question, and I don't know the answer to it. Emma looks like she might know an answer or have an answer. Yeah.
Might have something useful. Occasionally No, look, in March, the ACT government published their response to the Royal Commission into National Natural Disaster Arrangements, which included some recommendations relating to air quality information and advice and the national forecasting capability that goes to what you were saying about, dust as well as to smoke and pollen. So recommendation 14.2 in that Royal Commission report was that national air quality forecasting capability for Australian state and territory governments to develop national air quality forecasting capabilities that include broad coverage of population centres and apply to smoke and other airborne pollutants such as dust and pollen to predict plume behaviour. And the ACT government's response was that it's agreed in principle. The ACT government supports measures to strengthen air quality forecasting capabilities, but notes the resource implications and the cost to achieve this need to be assessed against the application of benefits obtained. So what I'm seeing out of that response is they agree with the principle of doing it, they're just trying to find a way to pay for it, basically.
So if we from council push it harder to government, do you think they might receive it positively?
It's certainly something that we can ask questions about after the next budget is coming down shortly. So we can certainly keep it in the conversation.
Yeah, and definitely bring it up because, that's how we'll get these things happening.
I mean, put it on the list of things that concern the community for the budget.
We go one of the surprises.
I have a question. David, who came before with his PowerPoint presentation, a gentleman in the back who is a hired consultant, who is, I guess, he's contracted to do the consultancy. Could you please find out how much the contract is for that? How much is, well, for the company that's doing the consultancies on these things, how much of budget gets spent on community consultation, and if there's any key performance indicators attached to that or something?
Sure.
It seems like there could be a lot of money going down a consultancy hole. Sorry guy, but you know what I mean? Probably that level of PowerPoint presentation is the equivalent of an APS 3. Sorry. That level of information. I think it's just a little bit below community expectation, and I'd be interested to see the funding amount that's attached to this consultation, particularly when, anyway.
If you can email us, we'll have different methods of asking. So send an email to us and let us ask via our different channels.
Okay, sure thing. And just another sneaky quick question on the Duffy shops. Duffy shops upgrade, how much has already been spent out of the $2.5 million for that upgrade?
It's still in the conceptual phase, so I don't think any of it's been spent.
So I think they just put out to tender, closed the tenders like last month, so it would have only been like...
For the design.
So it would only be like a week or two into that.
Okay, I'd just be interested to know how much had already been spent from that budget, because I don't think those previous
I don't
drawings
think
happened.
anything's been spent yet.
Okay.
It's all being done by TAMS at the moment.
Okay.
I did ask the Minister for a briefing on where we're up to. He said there's nothing to brief on yet. So I will follow that up once there is.
I've also been through a consultation with the director, and they explained that they haven't actually got a budget for it yet. It's just a notional concept, and the $2.5 million, I don't know where it came from. It seems like it was a journalistic publication.
No, it's in the budget. In the budget.
Well, they said that they don't have 2.5 million for Campbell. They only have 1.4 construction budget. Now, that's what the representatives from the ACT government presented to us. So, I think it's a good question that was asked about, can we have a breakdown of how this money's being spent, because it does seem like there's big numbers being put out there, and that when we come to the crunch, the numbers are quite small, and we don't really know how much of those is being spent on stormwater improvements and how much is on social improvements.
Okay.
Sorry, Maurice, so the improvements at the shops do tend to go over and above $1 million when they do a local shops. We can certainly find out the detail, but they won't actually have the final number yet, because they're only just putting out to tender the design work. So we can certainly keep asking, but I think we'll just be told there's no answer yet, but we'll keep on it. Oh, yeah, don't get me started, I'm in opposition.
Can I add to the question?
Julie's being positive tonight.
Can I add to the question?
Yeah, sure.
I'd like to know what overhead is being spent in the directorate before the project's rolled out.
You better invite Chris to a meeting.
Well, he's invited to every meeting.
No, I mean especially on this topic.
I am pretty sure I have seen there's a budget line in the last budget for the Duffy shops upgrade. The money is there, and to my knowledge, they've just put out a tender and have probably contracted the designers now, and it would be 1 or 2 weeks probably in at the most if they've even started. I mean, we can find out information as we go, and really happy to report that back.
If you don't mind, because there's been a few projects lately.
Sure.
And I've been scratching my head. Not that I read budget papers as a hobby. Sorry, people. But there just seems to me it doesn't compute the amount that's coming off the top before it gets to the construction budget. And I'm just curious how it's being divvied up. Like, is the bureaucracy gobbling up a greater proportion, and is it being done to offset an efficiency then the government's placed on the bureaucracy?
It's just really bad communication. It's over-promising and under-delivering. Because the promise says $2.5 million. Wow! Okay, and then you get a little bit of paving and a few trees. You think, what happened?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, currently there's going to be a new playground there, or at least an improved one.
It's whatever comes through all the consultation. I mean, there's lots of things that people are saying, upgrades to the playground, toilets. There's...
The paving is a mess.
Yeah.
The concrete.
And, landscape.
We've got a new bubbler in thanks to the election campaign.
Any other questions?
Marissa, just a question going back to smoke.
Yes.
Last year, after the bushfires, when the smoke was around, the government was trying to get all the clubs and everything to upgrade their filter systems. And I know there's a document, because a friend had one, but I rang up, must have been September, and they fobbed me off because of caretaker mode. They couldn't sort of do it.
Okay.
And I haven't heard from them since. Would you be able to forward a copy to the council, please?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there'll be some decent information on that. I'll find out some information and send it through the council.
Thank you.
Hello, Weston.
Hello.
It was very nice, to come back from 3 Western Arms last night and to find out that there was one thing I would never have to do again.
Yes.
A buddy was take the left hand turn to another sewer drive from too far because the bloke behind me won't put some shut.
Yeah.
I know they're having all the best of speed hump between here and there, the best I mean, but when I take a load of tuning down to the tip, I can put up and tighten it over the time before I keep going. But there's another spot where I think a speed hump could come in handy, and that is in Bannerman's, where it's up before you get the breath and now, because those 2 right-hand turns and the left hand, you have to take the much slower speed than normal. Because there's stars, but I might be worthwhile thinking about putting speed humps on either side there as well.
Yep, I can put that to the Minister. No problem.
Looks like we're coming to an end.
Yeah, and I guess for things that the council information, it is helpful to get it in an email to them. Then we can really tangibly follow up on it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Miss. It turned into a long conversation. No, thank you. I thank you, Emma and Julia and Mrs. for taking the time to come and speak to us this evening. It's always nice to be able to hear from our members of the Legislative Assembly and see what's going on. Give us a chance also for you to talk to the community as well. We now move on to the general meeting. When you came in tonight, you would notice that there were 2 sets of minutes. We have them for the February, I think the 18th of February, and the 31st of March. Unfortunately, at the last meeting, community meeting, we printed off the wrong minutes, and so we weren't able to ask the community to have a look at the minutes so we could pass them. So what I would like to do, for the ones in February, I understand there's one amendment to be made. Is that right, Phil?
Yeah, Ryan Hemsley wasn't actually here. I had an apology which I gave, but he also was here for a little while, then left before the meeting started. So we're going to regard him as being an apology, not present.
So what the amendment is, proposal is that the minutes will be accepted with the amendment that Ryan Hemsley would be recognised as being an apology rather than being in attendance because he wasn't here for the actual meeting. So that's the motion that we accept them as amended.
Yep.
First and second. Thank you. And the other, of course, is the minutes from our last meeting, which is the 31st of March. Can I have a movement to accept them, please? And accepted. Yeah. Thank you. Is there any business arising from the minutes from the 31st of March? I had a look at them. I don't think there's anything at the moment that we need to do. Now, as far as I can see, there isn't, so we'll take it that there's no business to be discussed. I'd like then to, well, before we move on, I'll just give you the Treasurer's report. We run 2 accounts. We have one for the Weston Creek Community Council itself, the committee, and we also look after the account for the Featherston Gardens. So in the main account, which is the Weston Creek Community Council, we have $15,062.12. The Featherston Gardens account has $8,435.43. So that's the balance as it was yesterday. Right now, to move on to an item of business, And as we've been talking about some of these issues this evening that have come up, is that the ACT government has of course gone out to seek ideas from the community about what we would like to actually see looked at in the budget. And this is what we're going to do this evening, is have a look at. Now, the Western Creek Community Council is in the process of preparing a letter that we will send to the ACT government with our ideas, both from the committee and from the community, either through meetings such as this or through surveys that we have done in recent times. Now, what the government has done is they've come out and they've placed the budget under general aims. So if you go on to the next slide, thanks, Ben. And what they're doing, back one. What they're doing is they're looking at ideas or projects or spending within these three areas. So we're looking at job creation and infrastructure, responding to climate change and supporting the most vulnerable, and then charting a path back to a balanced budget. So these are the three main aims that the ACT government has put out for putting some structure around their budget. And so with that in mind, the council has gone out, like I said, to the community. We've come up with some ideas as to how we can approach this. And what we've done for job creation, we'll go on to the next one. Here we're looking at issues such as rebuilding Street and Drive, obviously looking at the issues of increased traffic volume and some of the safety issues down Street and Drive in relation to the intersections and to the speed of travel and to access and ability to get in and out of the Weston Creek, particularly onto the Cotter Road in the morning. I understand it can be quite difficult when peak hour. But also, we've also asked for a traffic survey of that area and plus surrounding roads in Weston Creek to look at where all the areas of difficulty are, not only for the main roads, but the people using the smaller roads through the suburbs, a bit like a rat run in the morning, and some of the issues that are arising with that. And so with that in mind, we're looking at the Mully Street and Street and Drive, looking at the Street and Drive and the Cotter Road intersection, and then the Hilda Street and the Street and Drive. What we want to do with Hilda Street is to reduce the speed limit from 80 back down to 60.
Can I just ask that you perhaps consider finishing the bike path that is on Street and Drive so that it crosses over and there's a dedicated cycle turn as well on High Marsh Drive?
I think that's actually in here. Yeah, we've actually considered that as part of the whole measures down Street and Drive. We're actually looking at the bicycle paths as well and the access and the ability to move freely along Street and Drive in intersections.
My own hands there many times.
Can I just add? I think the proposition says, rather than do it piecemeal, by taking one intersection and leaving problems elsewhere, let's have a good look at the whole corridor. Sure. Let's do a risk-based assault on it, if you like. Also, we talk about, let's knock on Senator Zed's door, because he's offering black spot money, and people listening out there, and you here might want to get onto his website because he asked for black spots to be nominated. We put on our Facebook page recently. Tell Senator Z about your black spots, but make sure they're on Street Drive somewhere. Yeah. And I know he's already had a couple of nominations.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, you've got a question.
Yeah, about 6 o'clock last night, Heiston Street was just bumper to bumper to bumper right up the hill. I said to a friend of mine, must have been an accident somewhere, so I had to stop people at the speed hump that I inherited last year to let her out of my driveway. And then it was about the time of the fatal accident on the freeway, and they were all coming down Heiston Street.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's what happens when you get a problem on the freeway. People will start to look for other ways to move. And so Heiston Street does become one because they're looking for a way to get through to Woden and then down to the Tuggeranong because they can't get onto the freeway because they know it's banked up.
Well, was coming the other way.
Yeah.
The street and drive and the whole lot was like a car park.
Yeah. Well, this is hopefully what we hope the traffic survey will start to identify, is these points where things start to become a real safety issue. So we're just keeping our fingers crossed on that one. Moving on, here we're looking at the climate change and supporting vulnerable. As you know, with Coolman Court, the green area of the car park, which was supposed to be a car park next to the bus interchange, is now going to remain a green area. They're not going to be putting a car park there. So we're actually asking if they will go back to rezone that land, because at the moment it's zoned for community use, which was done as part of the master plan for the Weston Creek Centre area. But we want to take, people are actually asking us to go and campaign with the government to ask them to take it back and rezone it back to open space, and hopefully maybe then doing something with it, like a park or something at this stage. And that's part of the environment issue, looking at the heat sinks that people now talk about with so much concrete around. We don't want to have too much more concrete. And then getting back to the issue that we talked about just earlier, looking at having an air quality monitoring station here in Weston Creek. We're actually proposing that the government look at funding one and putting one here. And as we said, we've already had quite a bit of a discussion about that, but that is one of our priorities that we've put up. And then the other one that we've putting forward, is just taking us back to a balanced. I'm not sure if many of you are aware that the Raiders Club are seeking a deconcessionalisation of their lease. And as part of that, there will be a fair bit of money sort of going back to the ACT government. We're proposing that maybe that money should be isolated and then used for projects back here within Weston Creek, maybe an air monitoring station might be one thing they could consider. We've also suggesting that they need to continue and to have another look at the ACT planning laws to try to see what we can do to improve that. It's an ongoing issue in Canberra across all of areas, but we still want to have them, keep them on their toes with that. We had an attachment to our letter, and we've identified some of the areas we thought we would highlight. One was the improved policing, to improve the police presence here within Weston Creek itself. And maybe having a shopfront style police point here, we might have a look at that. The government has already indicated that they're going to upgrade on Brearley Street, but we've still gone back on that. We've had a survey, and we've now sent the survey on. We've provided some details to Dr. Marissa Patterson from that survey about what sort of things that people would like to see happen with Brearley Street. And people want to have cafes and street art, outdoor eateries, but they still don't want to make, they want to make it keep it two ways. They don't want to end up having a two-way place, a one-way street, which was quite interesting. The other thing that we always keep, this is something that we always put in our budget because we still keep arguing for it, is an upgrade of this Weston Creek Community Centre. It's well and truly overdue for one, so we will keep pushing. We push every year, so that one there is definitely there. Also looking at the upgrade of the Coolman Court area itself, and even the playground areas which are around here just outside, having a look at doing an upgrade of that as well. And then also having another look at this southern car park here, just out here. Look at the safety issues with that in relation to some of the difficulties people have getting around, not only in their cars, but as pedestrians trying to navigate their way through it to get out to the bus interchange. And as we've said, we've already talked about asking them to do a major look at the road system here, particularly Long Street and Drive. And we've also asked them to have another look at the bus network. There's been some concerns raised about the buses, the school bus times. Some parents would like them to go back to becoming dedicated school buses just for students only, because they were concerned about safety issues for their students. We've also asked if it's possible to get a bus route to Belconnen to go across the Cotter They keep telling us they won't do that until the bridge is in place. But we'll keep asking. And we've also put in, and we will continue to support the upgrade of the Duffy shops, and also looking at the Fisher and the Arrowland netball facility also as upgrades. And also, as we said, we welcomed the changes and the upgrades to the Weston Creek Walk-in Centre, and we're also going to be welcoming the new walk-in centre in Molonglo as well, because that will provide further services in this area. And we're also looking at things like Featherston Gardens. They've been asking for quite a while to get some public toilets there to make it a much more enjoyable place for people to visit. So we'll keep pressing for that one as well. We're pleased to see that they've put a budget allocation for the Molonglo Bridge. At the moment it's still in design phase, but we're looking forward to when we can hear that they're actually going to start doing that bridge.
2025.
2025? Yeah, it will be a while.
I'm going in 2025, is what we've been saying.
Yeah. But it'll be well and truly. And also one of the things that we have as part of the Cotter Road and congestion, we've asked the ACT government whether they'll start to look seriously at putting some money into the budget for the east-west arterial road out of Molonglo. Because until that starts to get developed, that the Cotter Road is still just going to be very heavy with traffic, and it will continue to be so with all the increasing numbers of people living in the area. So the east-west access is going to be a vital way of improving the congestion in this area. So there's some of the issues, but I thought this evening is an opportunity, if there's anything that you feel that the Community Council can include in a letter to the ACT government about anything to do with budget issues, something that you'd like to see in this area that you would like to see funded, please, the Community Council will be more than happy to take those suggestions.
Yes, sorry.
Fisher Shops is really still urgently in need of an upgrade with play equipment at the shops, as well as improvements to the amenity there. It's just not up to the standard that some of the other centres are. The barbecue area at the oval behind Fisher Shops has been cut off from electricity, and I had a letter back from Minister Steele saying they don't know when it will be engaged with the grid, so that is unusable at the moment. So Fisher really is an area that does need a bit of effort. I wonder if you could add something in about that.
About the barbecue area at Fisher Shops?
But also an upgrade to Fisher Shops. It's basically the only one left that hasn't had an upgrade or hasn't got an upgrade underway in some time.
Yeah, we have recognised that in our letter to the government. We recognise that it hasn't been done, and but I know it's down to be done. But when, we don't know. But we're actually
not
pushing
this
that.
term, I think, is the answer at the moment, is not this term.
Not
It's
this
a
term?
long time to wait.
Yeah.
Because when the government made their commitments in the election, they make it very clear that those commitments will be delivered over the 4-year term. So they're probably saving it for the next campaign, but it would be good if it was earlier than that.
Okay. Well, we can always add that to the letter. We'll bring that up more and we'll push that forward just to get it done within this term.
Can I just raise the Briley Street shutdown? How are people supposed to get to the post office if you shut that down? So I hope that you're not going to push forward for that to happen. I mean, the majority said no anyway, but you've got to think of the ramifications. My post office box is right there, and I won't be able to get to my post office box. So Briley Street cannot be shut down.
No. The survey that we did, the survey that the council did, no one wants the Breeder Street closed to become a pedestrian-only access. The overwhelming support was for it to stay as a two-way road, and I think that's what we've actually taken back to the government. This is the survey. This is what people have identified as needing and wanting. They don't want to see that closed off at all. Yeah. Are there any other areas that we may not have thought about? But if you do think of something, or there's an area that you would like us to go to the government with in representing you, then please contact us through our email, through our website, through our Facebook page, and make comments.
Janice, I'd like to see in the Coolo Park, the one over here that to be rezoned for the greenery, some tables and chairs, because there's no place apart from Sakina's that's big enough now that the bookshop's gone for, say, 15 people to have a coffee. We can always get takeaways and have a coffee over there.
Well, to start with, it has to be rezoned. I mean, I think that's the first, and then obviously we'd have to go back out to the community to see what we wanted to do with it as part of that rezoning campaign.
Totally left of field, but I'd like to see a little bit of events funding for the Weston Creek community. At the moment, the Weston Creek Community Council is actually spending a lot of time applying for grants, working on all sorts of opportunities to try and have more events and more community activities that bring us together in general, not just either sports specific or, just as a general audience into these spaces. And I noticed that a lot of other areas in town have events funding or funded events, either through their community centres or, for example, the City Renewal Authority drops a lazy $1.5 million on events to keep their part of the town vibrant. And I really think that the Western... Sorry?
They also levy the businesses.
I appreciate that, but I think that vibrancy is something that should be afforded to everybody, and I note that other areas also have a lot of mingle setups and community supports to keep people, and I'm just not sure that there's a whole lot of funding there for that in Weston Creek, and I think it's really important that we have it for people of all ages. It's a little bit of, it'd be nice to have a bit of pool of funding or some support from the government. So I'd like to put that into the budget as well. I know it's a bit in the budget letter, but yeah.
That's
anyway.
okay. We'll add that as a suggestion. So, no further... There we go. Oh no. We don't know unless we put it in and ask.
I have a couple of issues. I don't know whether you're aware, but there's a sewerage vent behind the scout pool. Now, there's a lot of awful odour comes from there most of the time, depending which way the wind blows, whether we get it or not. There's supposed to be a flame that burns that odour off. Is there any way of checking that?
We'll have to take that back to the relevant department. We'll make a note of that.
Okay.
Thank you. And we'll write off to someone, we'll find out.
Because I walk past quite often and you can smell it, and also I don't live very far away, so you can smell it. You don't have to walk past. But apparently there should be a flame that burns the odour off. They need to check that it's alight.
Okay.
The other thing is, once the Coolo Park has changed its title, is it possible to have small market days there or something along those lines?
So I actually have quite a bit of experience in working at, being part of market setups, and we did discuss this quite extensively at one of our committee meetings, and I need to be honest with you that space up there, having fought to keep it as an open green space, it doesn't particularly lend itself very well to hosting an event that has market stalls. There's a number of reasons for this. First, sort of being actually, it's not incredibly it's not very well set up. There's no infrastructure for these types of events. You have to bring all your marquees in. There's no power, there's no running water, there's no facilities, and there's actually no crossing over there to get people across that road yet. So there's a few steps that are actually a safety issue before you start to really activate that space. What would be better as a market space if we did want to run something like that at Coolman Court is a space directly out here, which is really well set up for a market area. It's not as sunny, it's not as natural, it's not, you know, but it's more suited for high volume foot traffic and the sorts of things that you need to have a community event like safety for children and yeah, just things like that. So while I completely understand that people might go, oh yeah, it's great to have an event up there, this is one of the reasons why we want toilets at Featherston Gardens. Okay, because Featherston Gardens actually has a setup, it has a car park, so people can park there safely. Once you're on the land, there's no traffic to contend with. There's this beautiful curated gardens that the Friends of Featherston have spent a lot of time taking care of, and it's a beautiful curated space that's perfect for community events. So while I appreciate that it may seem like a good idea to have a market over there, I think that having fought to keep it as open space, having a meadow type thing or just an area which is open space and just a couple of where people can have some quiet lunchtime breaks or what have you, and kind of just enjoying that space as an open space is probably the best.
It's just that I thought, as we say that in becoming a car park, maybe we should use it.
An open space, no,
Appreciated.
totally agree, but an open space needn't mean a negative space, so to speak. It can just be on its own, and yeah, we don't have to activate it for it to have a value to the community abroad.
I know the answer, sort of, but I thought you might like to know. So I'm going to ask Simone. Floriard, Upper Chapman, the one we looked after. Can you give us an update on where it's at, whether it's likely to happen, and also a bit of a report on how it went last year?
Did everyone see our Floriard display at Chapman last year? Yes. How could you miss it? We are going to apply to do it again this year, and we're going to apply to do it in the same place because that place is, in my opinion, it is a very good space to have an activated community site. There's about at least 5,000 people who drive past there every day. There are school kids, hundreds of them that walk past. There are local residents who can access that area. It's in a conjunction of 3 suburbs. All the planets align. It's a really good spot for it. So we've asked again if we could do it. We've put in an application and we won't find out till the 13th of May, that's next week, and then it will move really quickly. So we'll still coordinate all of that, hopefully get the school kids on board this year, hopefully get twice as many scarecrows, yeah, it should be really good. Can I also just quickly mention that there's a project going up at the skate park. There is some street art that's going to be put up there. So if you do happen to drive past and all of a sudden see that there's graffiti all along the wall there, that is planned and and by design. So the ACT government is coordinating that as part of a mentorship program, and I think it may be going up as early as next week. We've tried to get them to mentor some local kids, along the lines of it's a street art project, not graffiti, the difference being legal and illegal. But we do want to encourage a culture of creativity amongst the youth here, and I think it's a good opportunity for them to engage. So yeah, you might notice that happens in the next 3 weeks.
Thank you. we finished the discussion on the budget. Are there any other issues or other comments that you'd like to make? Any other things that you'd like to bring to the attention of the Community Council?
Related to the first point made in the budget, but just slightly separate to it, I think a degree of urgency needs to be given to the road safety situation, especially concerning Streeton and Hindmarsh Drive at those intersections that aren't controlled by light signals. We, on Saturday, we went past a very nasty looking accident at the bottom of Hyson Street, where it connects with Streeton Drive. It didn't make the press. There's people laid out on the road, but it's not a good look. And they didn't look, it wasn't as bad as it looked. But we're getting to that situation that Lyons and Chifley suffered with Hindmarsh Drive, where they ended up with fatal accidents at these uncontrolled crossings, and eventually they put lights on. And I think that's a matter of urgency in road safety. And if you ask for a recommendation, I'd say the first thing you do is chop the speed on Streeton and Hindmarsh Drives down to 70, perhaps, just to reduce that. The overriding safety need I put on that is it shouldn't be an acceptable or even accepted outcome that people driving out of low-speed suburbs should encounter intersections where they may be subject to serious or fatal injuries at intersections. That fundamental need is not being met, and we know that, and it's just a matter of time before we have enough fatalities to get the stats to do something about it. And I think it's an urgent thing. The other one, on a completely different subject, if I may, as one of the pedal power advocacy team from Murrumbidgee, which we now do on electorates, is we've tended to go away from talking about specific fixes, so the old pothole and path approach, and say things like, is it safe, is it attractive to use? Safe to use comes up a lot, unprotected, for instance, this cycle route 5, which is a run that runs down here past Weston shops, Pullman shops, and then goes out towards Cotter Road, that's C5 in the new parlance. That's meant to be a major community route. According to the designs, it's meant to be a certain width and a certain quality. It's meant to be lit, off-road, all off-road, yeah. So it's meant to meet certain physical infrastructure standards, which is width, smoothness, lighting, approaches to underpasses, curvatures, climbs, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and it doesn't come anywhere near that because it's almost 50 years old. So we just use the word, is it safe? No. In many places it's not, especially narrow crossings over bridges next to 80k roads. So it's not good enough. So we don't hear much about it because people don't use it because they think it's unsafe. Even an off-road path is unsafe or unattractive because it scares you when you use it, or when you're there with the dog, or when you're there with the kids. So that's the line we're running now. Is it safe? Is it attractive? Does it meet contemporary standards? And I'd say that to apply that to the review of Street and Drive, for example, start with the basic needs and the standards that should be applied, and then get on to specifics, I think. Because too often in pedal power land we found, yes, the pothole eventually gets fixed, but that was just part of the problem. But I think we all know what we're talking about in that one. I could also bring to your attention the amount of work going on Namatjira Drive, between Hindmarsh Drive and Canberra at the moment, and you'll notice double speed humps at intersections. Brand new on Namatjira Cofra Drive. So not only have you got the school zones enforced, but you've also got double speed humps, or raised safety platforms, as they are formally called, on Namatjira Drive. So very significant works, and it's all aimed at slowing traffic down and coping with the high school. Yeah. So I'll double that back to that urgency about the speed issues and danger on our roads. There's proof that somebody's actually doing something about it, and are we really getting there?
Yeah.
I know a little bit more about that issue on Namatjira, because I substitute the time to meet with the roads people. There's two projects actually. One is updating bus stops to modern disability standards. They researched it and they found there was a surprising amount of people getting on those 70 and 71 buses that go up there every 15 minutes now. And now they've finally stopped travelling as a convoy, it's even better. And then they looked at the road safety because of complaints. They had the crash data and they had the speed camera data. And when they finally looked at it, they said we fell over at some of the speeds people were reaching down there. They looked at demand, you know, there's schools, there's older people down there, and they're reconstructing it to what is Australian best practice, apparently. So they've got a wide road, they're trying to slow the traffic down, they're reducing their risk exposure, and they've also dealt with all those pesky ramps up from the underpasses that people in wheelchairs or mobility challenged would struggle to get up to. They've moved bus stops actually quite a few metres away from where they were. There was one stop, it was just over the top of a crest, so a motorist going over the top of the crest would get a bit of a surprise finding a bus parked there. So they've done a lot of good work, and it was a very worthwhile exercise spending an hour with the team in there.
The other thing just to add perhaps is the street sweeping on the main roads that do have bike paths, because it's very occasional that when the street sweeping goes right to the edges and gets the bike paths as well. Yeah, and the cars kind of push glass and things into the bike path as well. And it's just, you know, there was a good street sweeping just before the election.
Obviously on-road lanes.
On-road lanes, yeah. The on-road lanes do need to be swept as well.
I should say speaking of the pedal power approach now, it's changing after many years of I think I can speak loud, but even louder this one. after many years of pushing for on-road lanes, there's a move away from unseparated on-road lanes on roads of 70k or faster. So despite the fact we've got that brand new lovely surface on Street and Drive, hooray, but the push now is not to have on-road lanes that aren't physically separated, either in distance or through physical separation like rails or like the castellated curbing used over the road over Hyson Street, over the hill.
That's awful, excuse me.
The reason is the keen people will still use it, but most people won't. So what's the point?
If you have to move slightly to the left in order to avoid something in the centre of the road, you've done your tyres because you've run up this.
That's the idea.
Well, how?
That's the idea. The idea is and I was the pedal power person for that project, that they were restricted in width because of the cutting size, and so that became a compromise. That you couldn't separate the off-road path further from the road like it's meant to, according to the design specs. So they had to put next to the road, and the physical separation they debated, is it railing or do you do it with a cascade?
Railing would be worse because it would be like a cheese grate.
It's a 6.5 dozen job. Look at the bridge over Tuggeranong Parkway on Cotter Road, and they put a different solution there, a big fence, which is already being crashed into. So that was their option. They could have done that.
Are there any other sort of matters or any other issues that people would like to raise?
Yeah, stop the light rail.
If there are no further issues, I'd like to thank you very much for coming this evening. It's been quite an interesting one. There's been a lot of discussion between the community and the speakers. So thank you very much, and I'd just like to officially close the meeting.